Richard, you mentioned this was an online doc as well. We could comment on directly. Is that where's that link been shared?
Well, yeah. What we'll get. You should have had actually with your reminder this document, but it'll be sent out to you again, updated, so sometime next week for each of their meetings, which will be a Word document, so you can make comments and get that back to us.
Cool. We good?
Okay, right, here we go. How do we ensure that the incomplete building services design, does not impact construction? And the overall considerations, stakeholder engagement. Timely engagement with stakeholders is crucial for gathering valuable insights and ensuring alignment with the project goals. So very much like we had in the last meeting, who wants to start us off? John.
Me.
You.
Okay, so from my experience, what normally happens is a project will be set in design stage for so long that when it actually comes to the construction stage or the completing of the work, there's limited time. It's then all rushed, and then there's issues.
So how do we do that? How do we ensure this timely engagement of stakeholders?
So I mean, there needs to be a clear a project timetable to start with. There needs to be the necessary meetings. Again, at Imperial, we had technical action group where it was getting the right people with the right skill sets to the table so they could all pass comment. So that's a crucial, important element.
Would that be something that could be contractual in terms of from the developer that this must occur?
So I was just thinking, I mean, we have sort of timelines of things happening. So REBA will have their different stages and when they should happen and what is involved. So if within this kind of element, there could be a very similar sort of time frame of different stages of who should be engaged and when. That would definitely sort of fulfill this criteria and fill those gaps, because so many times not the right people are at the table, and then you have to have another meeting because you've got to bring other skill sets to the table, perhaps.
Anybody else on this one? Okay, we'll move on. Utilizing technology. Utilizing 3D modeling, conducting gap analyses, and detailed construction planning can enhance the construction process. So 3D modeling, conducting gap analyses, and detailed construction planning. John Field.
I mean, a big thing with BIM nowadays is contractors coming on board. If they're having a substantial part to play, then they produce 3D modeling. So then the organisation or the client can then utilise these plans under BIM and then obviously indicate what work's going on where and all the necessary documentation. But the 3D modeling, more importantly, it would be part of BIM anyway. So that it costs. That's the problem again. I think we've sort of discussed in previous meetings. It's great having all these things, but people want things done on a budget. Well, that then doesn't lend itself nicely to have someone come in with this 3D modeling camera, but it certainly helps. And then you can do a walkthrough afterwards, and anyone visiting the place, any contractor, etc., can virtually walk through the building without necessarily actually having to be there.
So part of the how we do this is that there's got to be a recognition, there's going to be a cost, and there's got to be a preparation that you're prepared to pay for it.
And I mean, BIM is the preferred method, I believe, by the government with regards to the golden thread, etc. Although obviously they wouldn't insist on it. Perhaps, yeah, that's sort of in line with BIM. It should be recognised that the 3D modelling would be
What
key.
about gap analyses? Anybody else? Anybody else got something to say? Or should I pick on someone? Phil.
Yeah, thanks. It's a complicated landscape, isn't it? I think the problem is that BIM on its own won't solve the problem, and it may well be that the solution is locked to a vendor. It might be a walled garden, and also BIM isn't always used across a whole project end to end. It might be just used for pinch points or for clash detection, something like that. So it doesn't really offer an end to end solution. I think a lot of this relates back to perhaps more design freezers, or looping back to that client engagement. I mean, you know, if you compare a construction industry to other manufacturing, you know, nobody stops the production of your car before it comes off the production line to say, can we add a sunroof? Well, construction's riddled with changes all the way through, which we have to take account of, which ultimately impacts on the design. You know, it's a agile process, isn't it?
Anyone else? Construction planning, detailed construction planning.
It could be that you're almost forced to enter something in a field on a sort of an application to acknowledge whether something, you know, is being undertaken in that area or not, as a kind of an aid memoir as well. So that, you know, using the technology, gap analysis. Well, hang on a minute. We want to do this. Actually, it's reminding me that I need to do this, this, and this as well. So that might help.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting idea, actually, because what you could do is you could hold against certain elements the fact that they're likely to be going through walls, for example. That's a really, really interesting idea. I've not thought of that.
And it's almost holding whoever more accountable as well. They can't say, I didn't think of that. Well, hang on, you've just gone through this particular software and it reminds you. And like you say, is this a compartment wall? You have to acknowledge whether it is or isn't. And then actually by saying no, and you carry on, there could be a warning caveat, or by saying yes, well, are you putting these measures in place? And yeah, are you sort of instructing a competent, accredited, third-party accredited fire stopper to then make good the work, etc., perhaps?
Absolutely. We've got Wesley on the call from Bolster. Wesley, would you have a view on that?
Yeah, definitely. It's just with it being our first one, I'm just kind of listening more than kind of, you know, giving input sort of thing. But exactly what he just said there with like the BIM model, the 3D modelling is amazing, but a lot of these buildings haven't even got fire strategy drawings, and it's one of the challenges we face is to ensure that the buildings even got fire strategy drawings to work to. What you just said there about, like, you know, it's basically like if statements, basically. So if it's got this, it does this. If it's got this, it'll release these questions and so on. And customizing these templates and standardizing these templates, I think, will really help. But yeah, technology wise is our biggest challenge is these fire strategy drawings as well, and buildings that should have them haven't got them. And then once you've got them,
we're coming on to that.
Yeah, so you might be jumping the gun a bit, sorry, but yeah.
No, please. It's just if we don't keep it in order, I'll get lost.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody else on utilising 3D modelling, conducting gap analyses, and detailed construction planning? Okay, we'll carry through. Technology dealing with competency and compliance management. We had a lot of that actually in the very good stuff in the last meeting. Anybody want to summarise that? Wesley,
Once I start talking, I better shut me up.
you carry on.
I've not said anything for 2 meetings, but basically the competency is what we kind of do is the companies must be third party accredited, and one challenge we face with that is to even use our software. But some of the challenges we've faced over the years is the company might be accredited, and then we've then gone down into the operatives and the people installing being accredited, and everything's there. But you're also then facing challenges like the third party companies, the time it takes to get accredited, and the backlogs in that as well. So it's kind of like you're kind of fighting you're having a problem one way there where you're telling people to be accredited, but then it might take 6 months for them to get accredited. And do you think you then wait until you let them use the software, or do you know, and so on.
Yeah.
It's just challenges that we faced over the years, if that is people wanting to do it right, but then the timescales involved in getting accredited and so on.
George.
Yeah, and part of that, as I understand it, Wesley, is that you've got a lot of the accreditation bodies are accrediting the company, not the operative.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one thing we've done is we'll get clients saying, oh, you know, they'll pull a contract and they'll say, well, we've used Bolster, that the company's accredited, but it's only as good as the people you employ to do the work. And if the subcontract says aren't accredited, it's worthless. Basically, like with the user documents and the certs and things like that, you can, you know, we're making people attach it so it all traces back to that individual user. So what we've brought in now is this competency for the actual installer and the operative, as well as the company. So because the amount of times these operatives might work for 10 different companies over the year, and they'll pop up all over. We see it on our system that they're now working for somebody else, and they take them kind of qualifications with them as well.
And are you doing the accreditation, Wesley, or have you got a third party doing
No,
that?
we completely stay out of it. But what we say is you must be third party accredited. So that could be FireS, IFC, it could be, you know, there's independent fires doing stuff as well. But we have to kind of stay out of it. It's the same as saying you must use third parties, you know, the product sort of thing. We can't say you must use this product. You have to say they've been tested and so on. So on our system with our products, we'll only allow products on there that have been tested.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's
Peter,
the challenge we're fighting, to try and make everyone do it correctly. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Peter.
Just a couple of observations there. My camera's decided to have a day off, it seems, but in oil and gas, we went down this accreditation route, and to some extent it still exists, but what we found to be much more efficient and much more engaging was to enable the organisation to do its own accreditation. So that's one thing. You know, we trust our people to build tremendous buildings, to do extraordinary things, but we don't seem to be able to trust the same judgment, the same people to judge whether a person is competent or not. If they're armed with the right credentials, they're armed with the right mechanisms to be able to validate competency, why can't we do it ourselves?
But I don't want to go down. Sorry, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of competency. What we're looking at on here is the requirement of having technology to deal with it.
But the technology is the solution, actually. So if you arm the technology with what good looks like, and then you have the validation of the achievement of that good, then why do you need third-party assessors? That's one thought. The other is competency is a continuum. It's not the static thing. So the thing I say is I'm an ex-member of the TA, and I got a heavy goods license a gazillion years ago. I still have that. I am still able to drive a heavy goods vehicle on a British road. Please don't let me do so, because I'll kill myself and or others. So it's not a true measure of competency. The fact that you've gained a certificate on a given day, there's a thing called the forgetting curve, which is absolutely staggering. And it shows that people forget circa 90% of what they've been taught within a few months of being taught it. So just a couple of things to think about. So that we tackled this subject using 3 different sets of technology in different ways. And I said in the last meeting that for me, the linking of compliance with competency and with the management of risk in one technology platform is a very elegant way of dealing with all of this. And it happens also to deal with certification. Have I got this certificate? Have I been audited by this person? Another statement was made about migrant workers, and that's a very common thing that we deal with. And what we do is we ask the permission of the holder of the data to give us permission to move the data. So this is, let's say Mace on one side, and we've got Beazley on the other side. We want to move, we need the permission of both organizations and the individual to migrate that data. So the repository remains the same, the metrics remain the same, and we're able to move the individual from organization to organization and give that visibility.
Excellent. Yeah, that's absolutely excellent. George, do you just want to just drop in on the technology angle on that? I'll come to you in a minute, Phil. Sorry.
Well, I would say the critical thing here is the standardization of the way data is held so that it's interoperable across different applications. Obviously, progressively, we're getting more and more tools that can help with that process. The other thing is also looking at things from a point of view of referencing back to building regs and things like that, which is very complex, and it's a matter of being able to make sure that a product is actually being brought forward. I think we were talking about this earlier this morning, weren't we, Richard? With the manufacturing group, the contracted part of this. This question really has come out of the fact that incomplete M&E design, where trade contractors are doing the detailed M&E design during construction period, is causing lots of problems in terms of quality. And Wesley's it's creating a huge amount of business for Wesley, actually, doing file stopping. It shouldn't really be necessary if it's been done properly. So I think that's both about process and also technology. Anyway.
Thank you. No, that's very pertinent. Go, Phil.
Yeah, thanks. Really, just I suppose, like many people, harping back to the conversation we had this morning and the emphasis on the identification. There's also identifiers for people and roles. So again, this is all tying this information together. And there was talk earlier on this call about people having their own databases and accreditations, etc. And again, I agree with what Peter said about it being done on a based on their actual performance, that the roles that they're carrying out on an iterative basis can't just be a certificate in time, like it's sort of MOT, but it's got to be done from a data perspective again.
Okay, what about the next bit is solutions addressing information and knowledge management. That kind of all ties into what we've been talking about now, doesn't it? I mean, Peter said that basically having one huge great platform that would do all that. Is that a feasible? Is that a feasible thing to have all this on one platform?
I don't think so. No, I think you need, people will be using different software applications for different purposes, and what we need to do is make sure that there's an adequately robust ecosystem where systems can talk to each other, so that would be my view.
Let's think about what other industries do. So look at where simple solutions have already been applied to problems. Look at DVLA. If you want to check the integrity of a vehicle, see whether it's had a MOT or whether it's state of insurance, you can just go onto the DVLA website and put in the registration number, and that all links back to a central database through perhaps through an API and gives you that information in your hands. And I agree with George, we can't necessarily lock down which vendors people are going to use, but the information, the thing that links it all back has to be central, has to be a common link there back to the thread.
Anyone else on that? Sorry. Go on.
Sorry, I'm going to say again, I'm happy to if other people have got examples, but look at the book numbers, ISBNs. Look at VIN numbers on vehicles. It's all based on a central kind of unique ID philosophy.
Yeah, but the
The only thing I would say-
DVLA is a much more, the DVLA, whether somebody's got a license or not, is a hell of a lot more straightforward than everything involving information in the construction industry.
Maybe, but they've got their own complications as well. I don't think we should kind of belittle that. But what they've done is they've simplified it by going back to a unique identifier. I mean, a registration plate on a car is a great example, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
however many million cars are in the UK, but then you can, that you can extrapolate that information based on then the insurer's information back to the APIs that they get from the insurance companies.
John.
Find the microphone then. So every building in theory should have a UK unique reference number, UKPN, whatever it's called, but a unique reference number, which is provided by the local council, which sort of governs that aspect. So it could be just like having a VIN number. Each building has a unique reference number provided by the local council, and then any information could be stored under that unique reference number on any sort of computer systems and so on, perhaps.
Yeah, it's called a UPRN.
UPRN, that's it. I know something like that.
It's managed by Ordnance Survey, I think.
Right. But we don't utilise it. That's the problem. In the fire service, we were meant to obtain those numbers, but quite often we didn't. But it's not really utilised, unfortunately. For me, that's a great solution, but it's not utilised enough.
So in terms of explaining the how on the technology with competency, compliance management, and information and knowledge management, what's the how? How do we do it? How do we do it? Peter.
Just a couple of observations there. If I tell you that in 1996, the oil and gas industry set out with a vision for a single platform that would encompass competencies from whatever skills are required in the industry. An organisation called APITO was set up. It was a bit of a disaster, frankly. And here we are 28 years later, still talking about the same subject, and the achievement of a centralized database has never been possible. And it's because there are competing interests and there are silos of governance. You know, the production operations are different to the wells operations, which are different to the subsurface operations, etc. So anyway, just to say that that's probably beyond the realms of possibilities right now, and it's quite easy for DVLA from a technology point of view. That's quite an easy task. When you've got ownership of the data moving around with a person that also owns the data, then that's quite difficult. So we're likely to end up with silos. Is one comment I would have. And in terms of the information, knowledge management, compliance and competency, for me, they're all the same. They all belong in the same box. And it's ensuring that the individual has got the information that they need for the task that they're about to perform, that they're validated performing it, that will demonstrate their competency, and they follow through the necessary compliance steps so that we can see second by second almost that their interactions within the validation of following that. And that
how?
I'd be happy to show you it the way we do it, and it is, for instance, let's take a PDF which is used for working at height, and we did this for Places for People, for instance, and a bunch of other social housing organisations. Was taking that and a number of people's organisations for working at height, breaking it down into steps that all of them followed, and then having people walk through. I've got the ladder, I've checked the base that it's sitting on, it's not rusty, it's not got wheels still enabled, I've got no electric cables above me. Walking through all those steps and making sure that people have done it, and then either a video or a photographic evidence that I've done it. There's my compliance, there's my update of competency, and I'm doing it the right way. I've got the efficiencies that come out of that, and associated with that, we've got risks. So falling at height is still the world's largest killer in construction. So that would sit on the Boston Square in the top right-hand corner and be a red alert. You know, if you have this percentage chance, dear worker, of dying, it's going to have this impact on the company. And we're informing the individual as they do the tasks, the dangers of doing it. So that's how we're tackling it. And if anybody's interested, we're very happy to show you how we do that.
I think
But
we'll be
it's-
very interested, actually.
Richard, can we? I'm just concerned that we're drifting off the topic, and this is really about building services design and how we're actually addressing that. What Peter said there is very useful and very interesting, but we've only
Well, I
got
was thinking more
like half an hour left.
I was thinking more along the lines of using his method, whether his methodology would work to answer the how for us. Would that kind of methodology work?
I think if we look at the source of this problem, in many cases it's about because the design itself, the building services design, isn't complete when construction starts. So therefore, a lot of for example, in a very simple way, you've got the architect has designed the internal compartmentation. Because of the way procurement's done, the contractors then come in and install all of the compartments, all of the walls, the dry lining, the internal walls, and they leave holes for where the building services should go through. But because the building services haven't been adequately completely designed, the holes are in the wrong place, and the holes are maybe the wrong size. So the result is that we end up with issues. So that is going to have a big impact now in the new world on going through gateways. Because if the design isn't adequately complete, then building control, I believe, and certainly the regulator, will probably put a stop to the project. So I think that's what we're trying to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just asking you, as the technology bod, how do we do that? Technology dealing with competency, compliance, information management. How's it to be done?
Yeah, the design itself needs to be completed earlier, and then the information about the products that are actually going to be used needs to be simple to be able to drop into the evolving design, so that if you like a run of pipework, for example, that would be defined by maybe the M&E designer. But then the process needs to be that the installation contractor would follow that center line for the location of the pipework and add the services to it. That would be that's it. That's how I think that would help.
Okay, well let's move on now to the next section and simplify. Excuse me, simplifying fire safety regulations. Simplifying and standardizing fire safety regulations is imperative for improving understanding and preventing confusion on construction sites. Peter, have you got something on that?
I was actually going to follow up on something that George said, actually, and a mechanism we use to address George's concerns is a digital stage case. So I've got the wall. I'm the person that is responsible for putting the holes in the right place. The recipient of the next stage of the process needs to accept that I've put the holes in the right place before I'm allowed digitally to move on. Just a comment, and thank you for reminding us what the subject's about. But I absolutely agree with you, George. That sort of golden thread in the continuum of the construction project has also to go through stage gates. It's not just the big stage gates of design approval, permissions, etc., but the actual construction of the building and all the phases within it. There are recipients that suffer the consequences of their predecessors. Are they happy with what they are receiving in order to allow this project to continue?
Okay, so simplifying fire regulations. Who's going to start me off, or I'm going to pick on someone? Okay, Philip Lammers.
John's offered.
Oh, sorry, John. I was looking down at the other end of the screen.
Like a lamb to slaughter. No, I can't put my hand down. We might have a full circle where we had a plethora of fire safety legislation, hundreds of different types of fire safety legislation, and then all of a sudden we got rid of that and produced one fire safety order, as it were. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the government at the moment are trying to cross all the T's and dot all the I's with regards to buildings that are already built and buildings that are going to be constructed, because there can be a big gap. It's a matter of, well, hang on a minute, this law applies to new buildings only. This applies to buildings that are already constructed. And already we've got differences. If it's already constructed, you don't have to do something unless it's 18 metres and above, but actually something that's coming through, it's got to be over 11 metres. Wayfinding signage, for example, is a good example. I mean, I'm sure there's technology out there that can remind you of, although I guess we're not talking about technology now, but
no, we're talking about fire safety regulations.
I guess it's just a matter of getting an understanding and a comprehension of all the requirements and regulations, then be identified and put into the guides for people to understand. But then if you try and represent yourself in court, you could get it wrong. So therefore you need the services of a solicitor 9 times out of 10, and that's how it's been designed. Perhaps that's what we're going down the route of. If it's a simple property, simple premises, fine, have a go at doing it yourself. If it's something more advanced, you're going to have to get the services of someone that's got that knowledge, that training, and is fully aware of all the different legal elements that they've got to be aware
Absolutely,
of.
but we're talking about how we can simplify it. How can we simplify those fire regulations, which would obviate a lot of those problems? Martin, what's your notes?
Yeah, hi. It's a tricky one, this one, because of course we know we have approved documents, we have British standards, we have best practice guides in all different areas of building safety, and to for those standards, documents, etc., to change is an exceptionally long process. So, you know, my thoughts are very much aligned to, we see all the time on project design bits and pieces used from different standards and regulations and best practice guides, all used together for one solution. And I think that there needs to be clarity of what is being used for an overall design, because to actually change the standards is an exceptionally long process, as we know.
Okay, anyone else? Philip Lammers, we haven't heard from you.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm not sure if I can contribute to this question. I admit I'm probably learning here more than I would be able to.
No, that's
contribute.
okay.
No problem. Where are you from, Philip?
Well, I'm working for Calvert Pickard, architects and
okay.
an information manager. Couple of projects with residential clients. So
Perfect, because we're going. The next section is consideration at design stage. So we'll be back to you.
okay.
Okay. Anybody else on fire safety?
I think one thing that we could perhaps be doing is looking at more at scenarios so that we can see which of the building regs, because basically if we look at regulation 38, which is one of the key ones, I think determining which asset types are the critical ones to that, which systems they're part of, and then look at the context in which those things are exposed. I think that's maybe a way forward with that.
Okay, anyone else?
I've just seen Paul White's on the call now. Hello, Paul.
Paul, you must have something to say.
It depends on which Paul.
Yeah, usually. Simplifying the fire regulations. I mean, it's. I think we will see simplification of the fire regulations, but don't confuse the fire safety regulations, which are about 6 paragraphs, with the fire safety guidance, which is the approved documents.
Sure.
Yeah.
So interestingly, I've just come out of a meeting, which is why I missed the first one, and I'm not sure whether I've still got it. Just bear with me a second to sort of show you what I mean. So if you look in the chat now, this is literally B3, which is fire safety and then internal fire spread. That is it. That is the building regulation for basically compartmentation. Now, if you can tell me how you can simplify that, brilliant, but I don't think there's much to simplify. But if you're looking at the guidance, and everything is guidance, even British standards are guidance. They're not regulation. They're just a good way of doing something.
So you're saying we don't need to simplify the fire safety regulations because they're very short anyway.
I think we might need to simplify the guidance, but not the regulations. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So just you want to make a note of that. So we've just got to we've got the wrong word in there, basically, haven't we?
It's a really important one, though, isn't it? Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, and I think well, basically you've got B1 to B5, and whilst sort of B1 and B2 might be slightly longer than this, they're not a lot longer.
Yeah. So it's the guidance. It's the guidance we should be talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, actually, I can if I just get rid of this just briefly. If I just share my screen, if it will allow me to do that. Okay, so this is Schedule 1. That's Part A, and then we've got Part B, fire safety. That's B1, that's B2, that's B4, and that's B5. So in terms of fire safety, in terms of the regulations, that is it.
But I think this is a classic, isn't it, where they are not explicit.
No.
And therefore, you as the industry is responsible for interpreting that in a way that then they can say that the solution that they've come up with is safe.
Yes.
But then all the liability and responsibility sits with the team.
All because the other point is, and I think it even says that now, is even if you're following the approved documents, it does say that even by following the advice given here or the guidance given here, this does not protect you from litigation.
Yeah.
So and then this is certainly the HRB gateways, gateway 2, etc. You're not even going to get advice from building control anymore. apart from the fact they'll just say you need to go, take your homework back and do some more work on it.
Okay, we need to get back to the document.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So, no, not at all. Just can you put the document up? Brilliant. So we're looking at considerations at design stage.
Yeah.
Understanding designers' duties and responsibilities is crucial, including accountabilities and responsibilities, and importantly, in relation to activities, tasks, and outcomes. Who's going to start me off on that one? Designers' duties and responsibilities.
You've woken me up now, Richard. It's your fault. So there are certain key documents, but the issue that we're looking at is the fact that we do have a principal designer. Now, a lot of the documentation and the guidance says you need to sort all this lot out. And what actually happens is that everybody's dodging this issue contractually by pushing it downhill. And I think before you even get into contracts, you're going to have to define what this process of all the designers in being involved. There's still going to be a principal designer somewhere, and then you've got to have this relationship probably mapped, as far as I can see.
So we're looking at the how. So how do we do that? You map the process.
I think we need to map it. Yeah.
Anybody else want to come in on that? Philip Lammers, you come in on that now as an architect.
Yeah. Well, I don't really know if I can contribute here. As I said, I do agree with what Paul said, that no one wants to take the responsibility. No one can take the responsibility. I think for us, it's very often coming down to just PI insurance not covering those things.
So do you think mapping, as Paul suggested, would help? Mapping out responsibilities?
Well, definitely.
I think it has to, and then people will realise what insurance they need to get.
I think the thing is as well that what we need to do is to have a more structured way, a structured methodology of roles and responsibilities, and certainly talking with architects who are taking on the principal designer role, where they, as principal designer, then become effectively responsible for the other designers, the M&E and the structure and the like. The way in which a couple of them are doing that is by being relatively explicit in terms of identifying what each of those other designers have got to do, so that they can check that they are doing it. So it's interesting. I think we're coming back to a situation where there's going to be more, I think, structure in terms. I mean, remember that we're looking at things as BIM for housing. We're looking at things from the point of view of information, and therefore, I think that we're probably going to need to have tasks, which Peter was talking about earlier, and what the output of that particular task is, and therefore you've got something that's clear and auditable.
Well, where's this coming from? Where's this mapping? Who's going to do this mapping? Who's going to do this structure? Where's it going to come from?
I think we're seeing it already to some extent. I think people like Reba are doing that type of thing. I think it's also the case that principal designers themselves are doing it, because it's the only way they're going to get PI, I would say. So
it's almost organic.
Yes.
It's kind of happening from within, as it were.
Yeah, because I don't think we're not going to get any more guidance from the regulator in the way that Paul's shown earlier. They want to, I think, probably understandably step back and say, okay, you're the competent people. You tell us what good looks like and how you get there.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else on that one? Okay, just do you want to scroll down a little bit?
I would just endorse, in my experience, what George just said. The regulator will simply look for best practice, and its role is to check that an organisation is following best practice, so that best practice itself is continually mobile and moving forward. The other thing about mapping is it's, for me, it's quite a straightforward business safety process mapping exercise. So it's looking at the journey of the design and construction of the building and looking at how those different processes tie into different organizations and mapping those, and then looking at the compliance issues that arise in each one of those. Sort of, if you imagine a corridor and we open up a door and it goes to the right, another one goes to the left, and then going down that path. It's a business process mapping exercise that again can be replicated in a digital platform.
Okay, okay. Right, let's move on. Planning and design.
Sorry, Richard. But one thing, Alistair Brockett from Hilti sent me something through, and he said, "Who takes responsibility? MEP design. Who takes responsibility for the fire stop penetration seal?" So that's maybe a question for the community.
Can anybody answer that?
Do you know, Wes?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you okay? I was just going to put my hand up anyway, then, which is good. What we're noticing more is they're grouping it together with like the dry lining companies, doing the dry lining. They're specifying that a dry lining company must do the fire stopping as well. So we're getting a lot of dry lining companies signing up to us, who predominantly are getting accredited by to be fire stopping companies as well, because the package is kind of saying it's all your problem now, whereas previously they used to say, you know, basically like the wall's built by the dry lining company, and then we're just fire stopping around the letterbox sort of thing. Whereas now we're seeing a lot more where it's becoming as part of a package. That's one thing I've noticed in the industry that seems to be happening a lot more, and I can definitely see that happening with manufacturers as well. You know, for example, like you'll get, for example, say you've had a rock wall teamed up with gypsum, and the whole kind of package is their problem sort of thing, and to go down with the testing as well.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Right, planning design process need to be well structured to avoid construction issues. This to include coordinating build and M&E design to prevent compromise and potential changes. So it's again all around early engagement, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's the how on that, Richard.
Yeah, it is. It's early engagement. So we'll carry through. Importance of complete design. The design of a building should be finalised before construction begins to avoid mistakes and uninformed decisions. Design changes should be kept to a minimum to prevent budget overspends.
I think again, it's telling us how.
Yeah, preventing design issues. Key steps to prevent design issues from impacting construction include identifying missing information, regular communication, site inspections. So identifying missing information. Okay, George, do you want to start us off on that one? Because that's obviously quite an important one.
Yeah, I would say that's where the client needs to set out at the beginning the level of information that they are looking for and their consultants are looking for. The contractor also needs to add to that so that there can be an explicit set of information, which then it can be easily tracked and can be audited. So that's what I would say, the clear definition of what information is required, and then for it to be progressively checked and validated through the life of the job.
Okay, that would be digital, presumably, would it?
I think it's got to be digital because if it's not, then you're reliant on people reading something and interpreting it properly.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on that at all?
Some of the information will be in documents. I'm not saying everything needs to be machine readable, but the documents themselves need to be properly referenced and structured so that you can read them easily and find them easily.
Yeah. Okay. Just scroll down a bit, will you? Just a bit. No, not that much.
Back up a little, Jess.
That's it. Stay there. Stay there. Right. Regular communication. Well, I think that's just communicate more. Though there has to be a mechanism for that to happen, isn't there? The regular communication. Site inspections, maintaining detailed records. They're kind of answering their own question. Start the design process with modular builds and ensuring complete service design can improve construction outcomes and reduce the likelihood of complications during construction.
That in itself is a how, Richard.
Yeah. Okay, competency demand profile. The publication of a competency demand profile related to the project and design should be required. That's again, that's a how, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say.
Right, rethinking the procurement process. Rethinking procurement processes is vital for a smoother transition from design to construction. This step can contribute to efficient project management and minimize risk. Right, okay, so how do we rethink the procurement processes? Phil?
It needs to be split into two parts. Obviously, you've got the labour element and then the products themselves, you know, both of which again can be covered by an improvement in the identification and adoption of digital.
Anybody else? Okay, providing tools and resources. Providing the necessary tools and resources from the outset ensures accurate designs, preventing construction impacts and minimizing the risk of design-related issues.
Sorry,
So
Richard, I've just thought of something on that procurement thing.
Yeah,
good. One of the biggest challenges is that the procurement teams are often quite separate from the design and construction teams. And in fact, actually, there's often or there seems to be, Phil can probably speak to this better than me, but there seems to be often a reluctance to let the two get too close together because the procurement team are tasked with getting the best price, whereas the construction teams are probably, they would like to get the best quality. So there's a tension there between the two. And I think what we need to be doing is helping the procurement team understand the implications of them maybe de-scoping something to save money, which actually costs a lot more money going forward and also increases risk. So that's probably something that needs to be communicated maybe in the form of scenarios and things like that.
Anybody else on that one? That's interesting. Martin?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I've seen this a lot recently. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that those two areas are at loggerheads at times when actually they're supposed to be working together. And certainly the experience I've had recently is the design team leader of a project actually required the procurement team who procured an alternative solution to take accountability for the performance of what was procured.
Oh, really?
So that, yeah, because the design manager was like, well, look, I've done my bit. If you want to buy something else now, you've got to validate it against the design. Because I'm advising this is what we want to do, but you're looking to procure something else. So you've now compromised my proposal. So he, well, of course, without naming names, he required the procurement team manager, director, whoever, to take internal responsibility to change his proposal. So
Very
that could be a bit
interesting.
of an internal handover to ensure that responsibility remains. Responsibility is the key, isn't it? If somebody decides to change something, they must take accountability for that decision.
Okay, that's very interesting. Phil.
Yeah, everyone's on the right page with this one. And I've got personal experience of it. It's a bit like the Wild West when it comes to the kind of the separation between the different roles, you got design and procurement. And a lot of procurement teams don't take account of the design elements, the technical content, you know, unless they're explicitly, you know, given that information and they're looking for that compliance. But the word I'd look for here is to bring this into this question would be integrity, because the roles around procurement, and I've tried to engage SIPS, as the organisation that manage or provide the accreditation for people in procurement functions. They don't really seem to have this on their radar. You know, the actual integrity of what we buy. A lot of times when somebody in a procurement role is carrying out some cost analysis, they're not comparing apples with apples. And again, that's back to what I said at the beginning, is they're not using an identifier to separate the kind of the products. They're just looking at a list that someone else has provided through a different supply chain partner.
Yep.
Anyone else on that? Okay, that's good. We've got some good stuff on that. Right, okay, the next one, starting the design process with modular builds. What are people's thoughts on that? Modular builds.
Richard, you've got back up the thing, haven't you?
No, it's number 2 EI.
Yeah, but we've already done.
You've gone past that
2GI.
point already, Richard.
Sorry?
You've gone past that point already.
Yeah.
Where have I gone to?
So we were just talking about 2G.
Right, sorry, just scroll down.
Yeah.
It's not my fault, it was just.
Yeah.
Right,
This
quality
is the
assurance.
cultural, these are the cultural problems we're dealing with, Richard.
Risk transfer aid.
No, you.
The blame culture.
I missed one earlier. Sorry, it might have been me, or it probably was just. Quality assurance management. The building services design should be complete before construction begins, with ongoing coordination, quality assurance management throughout the construction phase. So the building services design needs to be complete. Do we agree with that?
Definitely. That's
definitely.
Well, and this is about employing the specialists soon enough, early enough in the process, isn't it? Because the guys that are doing the detailed design typically are the specialists. So it's as much a procurement question as anything else.
So does that answer itself then? I think it does. Okay, accountability and effective communication between designers and constructors. Effective communication, that comes into what we've already covered. Recognise the importance of fire safety and scrutinising designs before construction starts requires qualified professionals. This again comes into the early engagement, doesn't it? It's quite astonishing actually how much of this is covered by that one point of early engagement, isn't it? Is there any more, Jess? Considerations at a construction stage. Lack of coordination between build and M&E design can lead to compromises and potential dangers. Starting the design process with, and this is the modular build bit that came into 2 bits. Do we agree with modular builds? Anyone? Wesley?
just this is more not my software head. This is when there was a dry liner and fixer years ago. To me, they sound like a great idea being built in a factory. The problems that occur with them is when they get on site and get connected together. I think, you know, the joining of the pods, the risers is where you end up having all the problems, access issues and stuff like that. I think doing the whole apartment as one is easier than doing a bathroom and so on like that with it. But that's just as a dry lining that I did many years ago. They never seem to work for me. The idea of them is good, but you have as many problems with them as you do with new builds. Yeah.
So we're not. So does anybody else have a view on that? Because we've got this down as a solution. Is it a correct solution? Phil?
It can be. However, I've got some of my experiences with it were tainted when I was working with organisations that were making modular, where basically they just had a construction site with a roof on top of it. They weren't making best use of the design phases and lean approaches with construction. And what we ended up having was lots of defects with products delivered to site that then were rectified during the completion stage of the job, which undermines the value of it. So it does depend.
Okay, it's maybe something we should explore more in our construction group. Okay, let's move forward. Halting construction when necessary. Construction should be halted until design issues are resolved, involving competent professionals and industry experts, enhances issue resolution and ensures project safety. Yeah, and we have to kind of take it as read almost that should be the case. So construction should be halted until design issues are resolved. Does that make sense? Is that practicable to halt the full construction? Would you do that, David Pope? I mean, if you've got a design issue in one corner of the building, would you want them to stop construction in the rest?
So thank you for asking me that, Richard. I think one, it wouldn't be our decision as the client, but that's a bit of a cop-out. I mean, in theory, the new regulatory process as designed kind of compensates for this. So in theory, you shouldn't have design issues emerging during construction, because you should have sorted all those things out anyway. So the design should already be coordinated enough to avoid it in theory. And then there's a process for significant design issues where you've got to halt construction anyway, as part of the building control process. So trying to read between the lines of what's been said here, this feels like there might be minor design issues, because the major ones should be dealt with as part of the process as standard. I don't know if that's a very good answer, but
no, I think you're right. I think the answer is it depends on the circumstance. It doesn't exactly depends what the design issue is. Well, we've gone over time actually. John, can you be very brief?
Yeah, it's just quickly. I mean, when things are put down on paper, they look fantastic, but then in reality, sometimes things do crop up. And to halt the whole project could cost a fortune, whereas if it's in transition, you carry on with one bit and you address the matter with the other bit.
Yeah, depends on circumstances. Okay, well, I say we've run over time, so I'm going to call a halt now. We've got a second one of these to finish off what we've not finished today on this question in a couple of weeks. I don't know what date is that. It's on, it's the same day, 3rd of April, Wednesday, 3rd of April. So if anyone wants to come along to that, it'd be great to see you. Other than that, thank you very much. Another great meeting. We've got a lot of good stuff to put into this document, and it's all down to you. So thank you. We're going to go again and grab a coffee before we have the next one. See you all soon.
Cheers, Richard.
We'll be coffeeed out.
Cheers.
By the,